Hello, and thank you for watching. My name is Don Eindhoven, and I am the founder of the Dutch cyber warfare community. You are watching clips recorded from our 22nd Roundtable event held on December 3rd, 2020. We called it the Corona Edition. This is the fifth speaker out of our set of 10, Bill Hagestad. Bill Hagestad is first and foremost a United States Marine, something which he is rightly proud of, and though he retired as a colonel, he is now a cyber warfare advisor there. You may know Bill from his outstanding talks all over the world about Chinese cyber warfare, and he's also written a number of books on the subject, titled 21st Century Chinese Cyber Warfare, Chinese Cybercrime, China's Hacking Underworld, and Chinese Military Information Warfare. You may have also seen him performing other work at conferences, such as moderating a panel at Hack in the Box. We proudly present you Bill Hagestad.
And then we are moving on to our next speaker, and that is Bill Hagestad. And Bill has been on the front lines and one of the, well, I'll call it first generation of speakers on this field. We've met, I think, also over 10 years ago in Tallinn. I think we first met. Bill, can you turn your camera on? Is that working for you?
No, sir. The Chinese are prohibiting that. Just kidding.
Those damn Chinese.
No.
I'm really not seeing anything. Is this my end or?
No, it's a technical issue on my side. Upgrade to Big Sur, and you have to go through the security challenges for enabling a application such as Cisco. We'll have to roll with it if that is all right, sir.
Yes, of course. So it's too bad I can't see you. It's been a long time since we last spoke, and since we last met, not least thanks to COVID. Thank you so much for being here. Let me do a brief introduction for the crowd. Bill is one of the, I would say, most invited speakers when it comes to China and their cyber warfare programs. He is a retired colonel in the U.S. Marines and still walks as straight as an arrow. By the way, Bill, Semper Fidelis for their birthday. That was quite recently.
Yes, thank you.
And I've known Bill as a very talented speaker in this area. He's very well acquainted with pretty much everything that goes on in China. And one of the few people that I know that actually speaks Chinese and is able to read what is going on those multiple forums and chat locations. I'm sure he'll bring that up himself. Let me look at the schedule real quick because I'm getting some questions about this. Yeah, right after you, Bill, there will be a 30-minute coffee break. So I've getting a couple of questions about that. So please hold it in. 10 more minutes to wait. Bill, the floor is yours.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate the opportunity. I'm very humbled and honored to be amongst this austere crowd, especially Mr. Giles. He and I go back a ways, as do you and I, Don. Where to start? This would not be a book promotion concept, other than to say that if you go back, better than 10 years and looking what the Chinese have proposed to do, and all of the friends that I've made along the way, it brings us up to 2020 and COVID. I'm finding, though, that the trajectory that I thought would have abated by now regarding the interest by the world in what the Chinese military is doing has gained an impetus and an arc of its own. Perhaps the knowledge that I have is now being called more regularly than I would rather admit in a public forum like this. I will challenge the audience and ask you all, if you look at the photo that is on the Dutch Cyber Warfare website that has me in the middle of two Chinese gentlemen, if you can identify both of those individuals, that picture was taken in Beijing, China. If you can identify them, the next time I am in the Netherlands, I will buy you a steak dinner. There have only been 4 people on the planet that have been successful at this. One was in the intelligence industry or realm. The other 3, one of them was a young woman on her boyfriend's mobile phone in a bar in the Middle East, and the other 2 I shall not name. But that gives you an idea of who I am when it comes to the Chinese military and their use of cyber warfare, information, weapons, tactics, capabilities, and procedures. One thing you should also know, out of full disclosure, specifically because this is an international audience, I do actively belong to the #1 think tank for the Chinese military, the NOFAR Institute. I will let you take that where you want, but that allows me access into the very country that I study. I will never and never have ever said anything negative about the Chinese culture, people, language, or history. This allows me to travel essentially with impunity back and forth to the country that has been somewhat of an adoptive nature when it comes to the military study of their use of information warfare weapons. I will tell you along this journey, my history with the Netherlands is quite has been challenging in the past. When I first started this journey, speaking about the effects of nuclear security in 2011, I was actually assaulted by the Central Station in Amsterdam. Spent the night in a Dutch hospital, of which much of my blood lay on the ground after being assaulted in one of the crowds on a Sunday evening. So the history there in terms of the physical threat that represents to me personally and professionally continues to haunt me a little bit. I'll be very careful when I come to the Netherlands. It's such a dangerous place. That being aside, there is not a single government on the face of the earth, with the exception of those that are on the U.S. denied countries list, specifically the Democratic People's Republic of North Korea, the Islamic Republic of Iran, where I grew up coincidentally, Bhutan and Cambodia, that I have not visited in the time since I've met Don and Kier and others. And why, you would ask, is this important and relevant to the discussion that I'm giving you here this evening? Well, it's because the very methodology and a taxonomy that Kier talked about in terms of what are the definitions that nation states such as the Chinese and the Russian use, well, it's this type of commonality and collaboration that we must work together, work on a common standard of language in terms of understanding what and who and how the adversaries think in order to perhaps defend against them. I just learned from a Marine Corps general not more than an hour ago, as the CIO of the U.S. Marine Corps, he asked, what keeps you awake at night? And his response was, traditionally as Marines, we go on the offensive. He said, I think of ways to keep my adversary awake at night, essentially channeling his General Mattis quote. Both of us have served with General Mattis in the past. That is not necessarily the point of this, other than to say it's important that we as individuals, as organizations, as nation states, start to prepare ourselves, because when we come out of COVID, that physical world will start to meet the virtual world, which we now know. I would surmise perhaps that we have lost some of our muscle memory when it comes to understanding how best to interact with one another. Certainly the keyboard and the computer systems are our weapons of choice, but I will tell you that certainly there will be a time when we must engage with our friends, our allies, our adversaries again. And that is really, truly the measure of determining how we can be successful, not only as individual countries or individuals as organizations, but as nation states, because just like the pandemic, we are all in this together. Suffice it to say, it has been a wonderful journey. And again, I'm honored by Don and humbled to be speaking with this group. I'm going to cut my remarks short and really offer it up for any sort of questions. Don, if you could help facilitate, that would be great.
Yes, I'm looking into that, my friend. By the way, in honor of a wonderfully funny situation, let me ask the question that someone else once asked you, and I'm sure you'll remember who that was. Are you a spy, Bill? I'm sorry, this is a joke between us. A couple of years ago, I'll let the person remain nameless. I'm sure he's smiling right now. We were in Brussels for an event. I think it was Brussels or Antwerp, and we were sitting outside at a cafe drinking some, and that question was posed to Bill very naively, very outrightly, and I almost spit out my beer, which was really funny. And I never did get it answered, Bill. Are you a spy, or are you just doing a really cool job?
Well, Don, even if I was in the clandestine service, I would never, ever claim to be that. That would be disingenuous and not afford me the opportunities that I have by being honest, transparent, and just generally lucky in the endeavors that I've pursued. Being a spy, that has a lot of negative associations with it. I think by default, we are all in the intelligence business these days. Certainly this event, even though it is marked as Dutch cyber warfare, there is still information collection going on. Really, that is a task that we all have in terms of learning. And for one thing is for certain, I am always in the learning phase. And when I look back at the list of speakers on this event, every one of them, even the speakers that have spoken today, are always teaching me something. Is that answering the question? No, I'm deflecting it because I can't answer it. Back over to you.
Someone else said we can neither confirm nor deny. Yeah, that's exactly what we get.
Actually, Don, the new phrase, and I want it attributed to me, and it's been out there for a while, is if you have to ask, you do not have a need to know.
I think you said that back then as well.
I did.
Funny. Yeah. So, by the way, Edwin said, on behalf of the Netherlands, I'm sorry for your incident, and I would have to agree. I'm sure you know exactly what he means by that. I have a question that was actually asked, I think, of Kier, but I think it applies to you as well. It's from Klaas-Jan Akkerman, and he says, do you think nationalism of technology like chip development and production will be a result of the cyber threat, and would it be a solution?
Oh, that's an interesting question. I think the 9 current laws regarding information, nationalism, and the defense of China in the cyber sovereignty realm would lend itself to the fact that they do not trust the West. That is really the basis for your question. The fact that they can build their own chips, the fact that they require financial institutions that are not of Chinese origin to use their hardware, software, and firmware should give you perhaps a larger pause and concern, because we do not have an idea of the vulnerabilities that may exist in those various platforms. That in and of itself presents a unique threat surface perspective. I watched with very much curiosity the discussion on threat modeling. If you were to reverse that question, one would say, how long before you were going to be mandated and required to use these Chinese chipsets in order to do business there?
Well, that's actually a couple of years ago. I think there was a study by an internal U.S. governmental service. I'm not sure who. They did a study on their hardware, their IT hardware, and whether or not it was if the supply chain was corrupted or not. And I think they found in like a very brief moment, I think within 6 months, they found 900 cases where something was amiss, and that can be, the wrong brand or the wrong chip that wasn't expected on that blueprint, or chips added to like a piece of hardware that wasn't supposed to be there. Can you say anything intelligent about, whether or not this is still something that China does and how far along they are in this program?
Yes, what you're speaking about is several different levels of stratification. You're talking about the Trend micro hack, actually, that the Bloomberg News Service had brought together a number of years ago. Certainly that is perhaps the tip of the iceberg. There are cases where intellectual property has been exfiltrated from various countries, certainly the technological giants and those that are procedurally based and thought leaders in this space, and certainly the Dutch are not exception to this or immune from it. The Chinese will look to those that have the expertise and then focus all their energy and might in order to undermine their position economically, militarily, and diplomatically in the world, so that they indeed have the advanced position of fighting and winning from a position of power. This would include, of course, the technical stratification there. What should frighten you perhaps even more than that, as I mentioned a few moments ago, and I don't mean it to say frighten in a scary way, that was Halloween, is the fact that the Chinese have built a process now that mandates that any foreign entity approaching their shores must adopt and adapt their mechanisms for using their technology, including the hardware, software, and firmware that I mentioned before. If you do not, and you are found to be in violation of this, this means that you could be charged with terrorism under the laws of China.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. This is not new information, sir.
Is this new, or has it been around for a while? Because I think this is new, right?
No, sir. This has been around since before. Well, if you look at the telemetry on the photo, it goes back to that photo that you have on your website of me in Beijing at a Chinese military economic conference.
Wow, I did not know it went this far. Wow. Actually, I'm going to assign you a question, Bill, because I've got a really interesting one by Oscar. I'm sorry, Oscar, we were out of time to answer this publicly. I will assign it to Bill, so he might be able to answer this privately on one-on-one. Bill, I just want to thank you again, my friend, for your time here. It's been an excellent talk. I hope we meet again physically in meet space real soon. We're going to actually